Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360-817 and subscribe. It's only $2 a month. There's also a free option, and I'll be posting all of my regular recruiting content over there on the Patreon site. That link will also be in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. So this is episode 79, Super Freshmen and Super QBs at OU Camp. In this episode, we're going to focus exclusively on the most recent Sooner Summer Camp event that occurred last Thursday. So this camp recap, unlike last week, we only got one elite camp session on Thursday. Last week, we got one on Thursday and Saturday. It was still loaded with prospects and offers. And OU is still, I think, holding the best camp sessions they ever have with the most quality prospects, making the most offers, and getting the most high-quality kids on campus that I can recall in my tenure following OU recruiting since, at least the Bob era in 2000. I think this is the best year of the Brent regime. Lincoln really wasn't doing too much with camps, and Bob's camp experience was a little bit up and down, depending upon what year and what coaching staff group he had. So we're not going to bury lead. The first big topic is Super QBs. So I think a lot of OU fans were understandably a little concerned when Jeff Lebby left that quarterback recruiting was possibly going to take a dip. Lebby was the biggest reason OU got Jackson Arnold. They were a big part of the reason why OU got Michael Hawkins Jr., beyond his obvious connections to OU. And they were a very big reason why Kevin Sperry verbaled as early as he did. So 3 years, 3 excellent quarterback prospects. You lose all of that edge in recruiting. Fortunately, you're able to keep Kevin Sperry. So Seth Luttrell has a little bit of time to get established. And this camp session, if things pan out the way that some recruiting analysts think, is really going to put OU in a great quarterback situation, or at least as good a quarterback situation from the high school recruiting ranks, with a potential room filled with some excellent prospects, or at least as much as the portal will allow any team to stock quarterback talent. At this point, I think it's pretty much sign the best quarterback you can every year and just don't worry about it. Don't worry about the other things that you can't control. So Kevin Sperry was also on campus. He was also throwing the ball again. So with Kevin Sperry plus the 2 names I'm going to talk about, you probably had the 3 best QB prospects across classes at an OU camp like ever. Because recruiting has just changed so much that you're getting kids younger and younger into your camps and evaluating them and making offers. But the first name we've got to talk about is Jaden O'Neal, the top 100, close to top 50, 4-star 2026 quarterback. He's listed at 6'3", 200. That sounds completely accurate based upon everything we're seeing from camp footage, him standing next to other folks. He's a big kid, big frame. Now, you've heard on previous podcasts, I love this kid. I love his arm. I love his accuracy, the velocity, his ability to throw accurate deep passes. He also has good mobility. And at the camp session, he was apparently also flashing an ability to throw from different platforms, throw on the run, and just looked every bit like an elite quarterback, like a potential five-star quarterback, which I think he is. The quarterback race for 2026 is shaking out a little bit. I like the Curtis kid from Tampa that chose UGA. A couple of Cali quarterbacks other than O'Neal gathering some attention. There's a big quarterback from Tennessee, McIntyre, I believe his name is, who's already with the Vols. So really, it looks like a very good quarterback class, but I think O'Neal has the potential to be as good as any one of them. You're hearing on different podcasts and different sites comparisons from Caleb Williams. I think there's a little Deshaun Foster to him, ignoring Deshaun's off the field problems and just kind of Deshaun's a big kid, 6'3", 220, and O'Neal's a little bit like that, and just has kind of a smoothness to his throwing motion and to his and to almost everything he does as a quarterback. So the news to come along with this, he has two or three more camp visits. He's making a big camp tour. They're hitting all the hot spots. I think he's hitting Ohio State and Michigan next. And then he's going to take some time and make a decision. It looks like in either late July, early August, somewhere in that frame. But it looks like OU had a lead going in. He just spent 3 full days in Norman. A teammate of his was on an official visit, linebacker Mark Ihenicher. So I think O'Neal was able to hang out with him as well, kind of get a little bit of a side benefit from that official visit. And it looks like OU's in a fantastic place for O'Neal. You have predictions from across recruiting, including Greg Biggins on 247 has put in a prediction. For those that don't know, Greg is a fantastic recruiting analyst on the West Coast, kind of the most reliable guy. When Greg Biggins says something, feels like he's confident enough to say something, you can usually take that as a high level of confidence and authority, and for him to put that in. So it looks like he's in a fantastic position with Jaden O'Neal, who, again, as I said, is just he's everything you want in like a future potential 5-star quarterback. But that's not all. There was another quarterback. Now, OU just offered Trey Taylor from Illinois. First time I can recall OU ever offering a 2027 quarterback. But in camp, they had Peyton Houston from Shreveport Evangel Christian. Let loose with your Brent Rawls falling out of a truck jokes. Peyton's a very different quarterback. He's not 6'6", 200 the way Rawls was. Peyton's about 6 foot, 185. He flashed an excellent arm, really good pace to his passes, mobility. Comparing him to the sort of smaller quarterback that was in last week, the 2026. In 2 weeks. It was in 2 weeks ago. It's just a week ago. Deron Coleman, who is sort of 5'11", 170. When you compare the two in footage, it just looks like Houston's a little thicker, a little more developed, has a stronger base, bigger base. I've watched his high school highlights. They have a strong Bryce Young comp to them. Although Peyton's 2027, so he's got 2 more years. He'll be a rising sophomore. So he's got 2 more years to grow, and Peyton's already bigger and taller than Bryce Young. So he looked fantastic. He got an OU offer. He tweeted out that offer with a photograph of Kyler Murray, talking about that he's a big fan of K1. So it looks like I don't think Houston's anywhere near a verbal commitment, but it looks like OU's in great shape with Peyton Houston. And there's a couple of other 27 Louisiana quarterbacks. As a monstrous kid who's like 6'4", 220, who's probably could let OU kind of sweep in and build a lead with Houston while everybody else is working to try and sign this other guy. So I think OU's in a great spot with Peyton. He got the offer he wanted. OU's made 227 quarterback offers. We'll see if they make another one. But it looks like to me that Seth Littrell potentially has the OU quarterback room in great shape through maybe, and this is going to sound, trying to do all the projections right, if OU got O'Neill in Houston to go with Sperry, you'd have, a loaded quarterback room in the 27s and 28 seasons. So, which seems kind of crazy to talk about, but that's just kind of the way recruiting's going. So we'll move on to really the story of the day. It's amazing that there could be a story that could surpass 2 quarterback offers and 1 quarterback, OU potentially getting 1 quarterback who I think could be a top 25 5-star kid. But there was one super freshman on campus. He dominated social media the moment the camp started on Thursday. His name is Marcus Fakatu. And I'll go with Fakatu. Hopefully I'm not going to end up getting banned for butchering that pronunciation. And I'll be honest, guys, when I first saw the footage being shown on Twitter, the highlights, I thought he was a 2026 kid. I was like, oh, wow. Oh, he's found another, gem defensive lineman for 2026. That's great. And then I read, and then I double checked and saw he was 2028. And I was like, there's no way that kid is going to be a freshman in 2 months. But he's apparently from Alaska, moved to California. He's had a big growth spurt. His speed, power, wingspan are all 5-star elite looking talents. He was absurdly good for a high school freshman in footage. I mean, there's no footage of him out there, I think, from middle school. I'll try and dig a little deeper. But he's amazing looking. It's like, if you actually saw a unicorn. That's sort of what it is. It's like a unicorn moment. Like someone says, well, you've never seen a unicorn before? And you're like, well, there's no such thing as a unicorn. There's no such thing as freshmen who are 6'7", 260, who move and have the pass rush skills that this kid has. It almost looks like it's a staged fake. Like I'm waiting for the shoe to drop where someone says, oh, no, that kid's really 21. And it's like one of those little league baseball scandals where the pitcher from the Philippines was like, 15 years old and he's only supposed to allow it to be like 13 or something like that. I'm almost expecting like some story to come out. That's how good he looked. And he's apparently a great kid. He's already got got an offer from Notre Dame and I think from USC. So he's going to be one of those kids. I think the last time maybe some young player created this much hype at an OU camp, for those that remember, I think it would be Myron Rolle. When Myron was on campus and working out and everyone thought he was a junior and they realized he was a freshman and started kind of a 3-year recruiting event where everyone was tracking Myron. And Myron, of course, ended up at FSU. But that's the last kind of moment I can remember. This sort of like, this guy's so good. He's only a freshman, kind of hype. So that would be enough, right? 2 elite quarterbacks, a potential five-star quarterback, and then OU discovering a potential five-star elite, top 5 player in the nation, defensive end who seems to like OU and has already been at OU. So that should be enough, but it wasn't. There were a number of super sophomores there. We'll talk about 3 players in particular. And the first one was T.A. Cunningham, defensive end from the Atlanta area, Georgia, 6'5", 230. His brother was T.K. Cunningham, if you remember that name, who was a big defensive tackle who signed with Penn State, had this whole horrible story where there was supposed to be this NIL deal with him in California that fell through, and it was kind of a scam and just terrible. And he ended up going to high school in Miami, and everyone thought he was going to go to Miami, and that kind of fell through. And then he ended up signing at Penn State, and hopefully TK can have a good career there. But before all that mess, TK was like favoring OU. Todd Bates thought he would add him to last year's defensive line group, along with like David Stone and other names. So OU's got close connections to TA. Bates and Chavez have known him for like 4 or 5 years. So it'll be interesting to see. He's a 2027 kid, so be a sophomore this fall. It'll be interesting to see if OU can stay involved in there. And maybe this is where OU breaks through and gets a Georgia elite defensive lineman, breaks through that shield that they can't quite break through to pull a prospect from Georgia along the defensive line. Another name was they offered linebacker Caden Henderson. And Caden is 6'2", 210, great lean frame. He's at Tampa Jesuit. Obviously, OU's been recruiting Tampa heavily. Eddie Pierre-Louis, Lewis Carter. And they've been recruiting other kids in the Tampa area as well. So there's a chance, I think, that his connection, he could be a player to watch. And he's got an OU offer and someone that OU will definitely keep their eye on, keep recruiting. And then OU had a couple of Louisiana receivers in. One was a sophomore. His name is Braylon Calais, 6'2", 190 pounds. No offer yet, but he looked good in drills, and he was working against some good DBs, which we'll get to in a second. So that's really that's the sophomores. And then OU had a couple of offers on campus, 2026 kids. The first one is Maxwell Robinson from Derby, Kansas, 6'4", 270. Offensive tackle, offensive guard. He's sort of a composite 4-star right about now. And he was maybe the only guy that could really put a hand on the super freshman Marcus Fakatu. Let's just go with that, Fakatu. And he looked really good. He was blocking Alex Shield Knight, who was part of the group as well, the OU Verbal, the rising senior. And Robinson was doing a good job with him. They were battling it, but Robinson looked really good lean frame. Looks like he can add good weight. Probably has, and I think he's got some flexibility in that sort of tackle guard world. Then the other OU offer, this guy got offered back in February, kind of fell a little bit under my radar, was Ryder Mix, tight end from Texas, 6'4", 225 pounds, 2026 player. As you all know by now, Ryder's verbal. We're going to have a lot more on him on a future podcast. But he looked very impressive in the video drills that have been released. I've watched his high school sophomore film. If you're asking me for a quick comp, I would say it looks very similar to Washington, Oklahoma, and Ohio State verbal Nate Roberts film at the same time. You look at their two films as sophomores, and it's very, very similar. So that was the camp action on Thursday. Again, OU making offers. getting elite players. Their offers camping, looking really good. The only other sort of highlight factor was there were a lot of OU verbals that worked out in the afternoon session. Malik Hawkins and Tristan Haynes played cornerback and really gave some of the QB footage is not like a lot of guys open, and it's because Hawkins and Haynes were giving the younger wide receivers all they could handle playing cornerback. Malik Hawkins, in particular, looked extremely agile, very athletic. I mean, I think there have been some concerns from some recruiting analysts that while he's got a big frame and he's very physical, that maybe he's not super athletic. I don't think that's the case. I think we could be seeing a big senior year from Malik, and just like his brother, probably a justification for a re-ranking. Marcus James was also there playing linebacker, and Trene Washington was also there. And the one interesting thing about Trene is when you look at some of the videos and he's there with Ryder Mix, they look about the same size. In fact, Trene maybe looks a little bit taller. So, I've always just sort of thought of Trene as sort of a 6'2", 210 big receiver. And where was OU going to use him? He looks like he may be closer to 6'4", 6'5", 210, 215, with a frame that could, maybe carry 230, 235, and be a very, very much a flex tight end that you can keep on the field and probably physical enough to be. Trene's very physical. He plays safety. He plays safety cornerback for Carl Albert. So that might be an interesting thing there. I know the tight end recruiting hasn't gone as well as OU would have liked, or how, for 25, or how OU fans would have liked. But if Trene Washington is 6'5", and let's say he graduates high school, he's nearly 6'5", 215. He's not that far off physically from Lincoln Kier. Lincoln Kier is 6'5", 6'6", 210. He's a big wide receiver who could be a dual purpose tight end. So Trene wouldn't be that far off from that model. So that's all the camp news. We'll be back Tuesday with an update on the recruiting class, on the recruiting weekend, in-depth information on Ryder Mix and his verbal, and any other news that's out there any other news that's broken due to the recruiting weekends and official visits going on around the country. Thanks everyone for listening. Please subscribe, and please give us a try on Patreon at patreon.com/Sooners360-817. Thank you very much, guys.